here's Eric Adams giving his kind of theory of the case here. And there's something that you're probably going to notice. Now, Eric Adams, don't forget, was a Republican for most of his life. He was a Republican for 20 years because it is such a Democrat skewed city. He became a Democrat in order to have a political future, and it worked out for him. But if you listen to what he says here, this is just classic Republican bootstrap shit.
Fantasy state. This election not a fantasy state. This election is a choice between those who believe in this city and those who don't. Let me tell you something. This is a city not of socialism.
No.
I've been to socialist countries. This is a city where you could come as a dishwasher and you can own a chain of restaurants. This is a city where you can be a cab driver and then become a doctor. This is a city where you could go from homelessness to building housing. This is a city where you could be a young person who's dyslexic, a young person who was rejected, and eventually to be elected to be the mayor of the city of New York. This is the type of city we're in. This is not a city where you use idealism to state you're giving everything to everyone for free. There's no dignity in someone giving you everything for free. There's dignity in giving you a job so you can provide for your family and the opportunities that you deserve. So this is not a city of handouts. This is a city of hands up. We're going to lift up the city of New York. And so I'm asking you, New Yorkers, to continue to stand with me as we move this city in the right direction. I'm ready to be your mayor again for another.
Okay. The New York that he is describing does not exist at this point. That New York does not exist. I tell this story, people want to stab me. I came home from Chicago in the mid-'90s with $15 in my pocket. I got a job driving a horse and carriage. Within a year and a half, I was able to get my first theater on 4th Street. The rent was $1,200 a month. I was able to quit my job within 3 weeks. 6 months later, I got my second theater on 4th Street, $3,500 a month. Another 6 months after that, I got another theater on 8th Street that I was paying $3,500 a month on. That is freaking impossible today. You could never, I couldn't do what I did then, and I have a lifetime of experience now. I did that as in my 20s. Those opportunities are not there today. Like, yeah, man, if you want to, you do have immigrants who come to this city who are willing to live 10 people in an apartment and, work 12, 16 hours a day to maybe eventually own their own bodega. Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You know what? You could do that other places too, and probably a lot cheaper and not have to work that many hours.
Oh yeah.
Like what he is describing is a New York that's been gone for decades because of people like Eric Adams.
Right.
Because of people like him. You're talking about a city where you got the rent, the average rent, as we will see, it's over $4,000 a month. How is that a city of opportunities?
Yeah, you could be a dishwasher and then own restaurants. If all you are is a dishwasher at one job, you will literally be homeless in New York City. You cannot afford to literally you cannot afford to pay your rent as a dishwasher in New York City. If you have two dishwasher jobs, you may be able to piece it together. If you work 80 hours a week, you can get the rent and the bills paid and have essentially no money left over at the end of the month. Like, you could live paycheck to paycheck if all you do every waking hour is work. But that's what it takes to live in New York City as a dishwasher. The idea that you're going to have the room to save and own your own, it's fantasy. It's nonsense.
Of course.
It's boomer bullshit is what it is.
Of course.
That's what this is. This is a 20th century way of thinking, a 20th century view of the world that bears no resemblance to reality anymore, which is why the young people overwhelmingly voted for Mamdani. And luckily, the young people, for a change, outvoted the old people. And that's why he won.
You used to have these pockets of the city that were affordable, man. I mean, even into the 90s, an apartment in Hell's Kitchen was like $500 a month.
Yep.
Right? And it's not like the wages were equivalently low. The rent has exploded. And honestly, the wages are really not much higher, if at all, than they were then. I'm not kidding. In the 90s. So this is Mamdani's response to some of that
argument, but to deliver on the mandate of this campaign.
So when Mayor Adams, you just heard him come out and he said, soup, silver spoon. He talked about manicured nails to refer to you, right? I was looking at him. You can show him to everybody. What do you say to him?
I understand what he's doing. He's trying to distract from his own record. His is a record where he raised rents on more than 2 million New Yorkers by 9%, and he's considering another 8% increase. His is a record of raising the water bill to the highest it's been in 13 years, supporting Con Edison when they wanted to increase New Yorkers' gas and electric bills by $65 a month. I would much rather talk about me than I would about his record if I was him. And so that's what he's going to be doing over the next few months. And we will continue to remind New Yorkers what's on the ballot. It's affordability.
I just want to play, because that's what this...
I got to say, man, Mamdani, for the level, I mean, he's not a newbie. He's been an assemblyman, but that guy is fucking smooth for somebody with his level of experience. Because he's making the rounds now. I've seen him in multiple interviews. That guy never gets rattled, man. I mean, we saw that at the Tesla rally. He got chased by crackhead Barbie.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yep.
So now Cuomo, this shouldn't surprise anybody with this scumbag douchebag. Cuomo will stay on the NYC mayor's ballot after conceding Democratic primary to Mamdani. So to explain, he is not committing to running a race, but he's not committing to not running a race either.
Right.
He is keeping his options open. He's sitting on the sidelines, probably hoping that Eric Adams polls as so toxic that he can get the Ackmans to come back in and back him again as their white knight. So, yeah, him staying on that ballot line increases Mamdani's chances tremendously. Look, he is so talented and Eric Adams is so loathsome. I wouldn't say Mamdani wouldn't have a chance in a one-on-one with Adams. I would say you still have to say it favors Adams in an open race through the entire city with Republicans voting too. Because to stop him, most of the Republicans are not going to vote Sliwa. They'll vote Adams, the guy who can win. So, but if you can split the Adams vote with Cuomo, will he do that? He's going to get a lot of phone calls from some very rich and powerful people telling him not to. So who knows? But that's an interesting development. So to the point of affordability in New York, which again, these people talk like what they're doing is working for people. You cannot argue that the kind of economics that Andrew Cuomo represents, the kinds of economics that Eric Adams represents, have not dominated the city, at least since the Giuliani era, which began in 1992. Where has it gotten us? Manhattan rents hit another record. Manhattan rents climbed to a new record high in May, with the median monthly rent hitting $4,571, up from $4,250 a year earlier. It's the third time in 4 months that median rent in the borough has reached a new high. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, the median rent rose to $3,650 in May, up from $3,600 in May 2024. Real hourly wage growth in New York City, 2019 to 2014. Top 3% saw wage growth of 34.5%. Upper middle, 9.8%. Middle, 8.5%. Lower middle, 7.5%. Low, 8.2%. So as you see nationwide, and I think this is part of why this race is getting the attention that it is, when you look at the economics, the problems of New York are the problems of neoliberal governance nationwide. It's the problems that everybody is having. Most of the gains go to the top 3%, and then everybody else splits the crumbs. New York has the worst income gap in the nation. So when Tucker's sitting there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, well, I don't agree with his economics. Well, what are your fucking ideas? I think we've tried them. Have we not tried your ideas? Share of households earning less than $25,000 a year. This is, remember, for the state, not the city. 16 point in New York City. There is no way you could live on $25,000 a year. Absolutely no way.
No,
but statewide, 16.8% make less than $25,000 a year. Share of households earning at least $200,000, 15.9%. Median household income, $82,095. Poverty rate, 14.2%, ninth highest of 50 states. And 40% of people in New York State have a bachelor's degree. So you have some of the richest people in the country. You have some of the highest percentage of rich people in the country and some of the highest percentage of poor people in the country. In many ways, New York is the ultimate outcome of neoliberal governance. You want to see what it looks like, you can see it in these statistics. You wind up with a very South America style economy. Now, this is what Keaton sent me right before we went on, which is interesting. So 18 to 24-year-olds were the largest group in the NYC mayoral primary, followed by 25 to 29-year-olds, followed by 30 to 34-year-olds. This rarely happens, if ever. We always lament that the elections are skewed by the fact that old people vote so disproportionately. But you can see here, it's quite the opposite. You have the highest is in the 18 to 40 range, well, really to 35. And then 35 and the 60-year-olds are about even. So you do have a little bump up in the middle-age demographic, and then it drops off very sharply after 65. So that is definitely part of the story of his victory. We always thought that was part of it, that New York skews unusually young as it is. The average age is 38 because it's so hard to raise a family here. Once people couple up and get pregnant, they tend to move out. So it leaves behind a lot of younger people. So this is how they are trying to take on Mamdani. The Israel first intrusion in every aspect of our government is a glaring betrayal of our Constitution and country. Bill Ackman promises to fund centrist candidate to defeat socialist Mamdani in NYC mayoral race. So he basically wrote one of his novels on X, promising to lavishly fund anyone who would challenge Mamdani that he would find acceptable and who could potentially win. Hey, Ayan Hersey Ali likes the idea. Ackman offers exactly what New York needs: competence, economic understanding, and the courage to lead with principle. So what this tells you is all of the worst people in the country are going to line up behind Bill Ackman or whoever he anoints. Because what you're hearing from Hersey Ali, that's what you're going to be hearing from, Chuck Schumer later on, I promise you. Like, if they settle on somebody, they're all going to coalesce around them. This was somebody here on MSNBC who I think got it exactly right in terms of how counterproductive someone like Bill Ackman flying a flag for the opposition is.
Say to the leaders on Wall Street, if you want to make sure that Zohran Mamdani is elected in November, if that is your goal, you should keep doing what you're doing right now, which is panic, especially in public, because that's almost exactly what the voters want to see right now. They voted for an individual who promised to shake up the establishment, and here we have the establishment appearing to run around with their hair on fire. So if you're Bill Ackman or you're Dan Loeb or any other billionaire, just remember the best thing you can do to support this campaign is to keep throwing these hissy fits on Twitter about how the sky is falling in New York. It's a great way to get people to the polls.
Absolutely right. So this is Representative Laura Gillen. Never heard of her. Have you heard of her, Keaton?
No.
Well, she went on to decry socialism
I think it's incumbent upon my Democratic colleagues to speak up and to say what our party stands for. We are not socialists.
We are not socialists. Remember Nancy Pelosi when they asked why she was against stopping congresspeople from trading in the market and profiting exorbitantly like she does. We're capitalists. It's a free market. We have the right to participate in that. So here is Hakeem Jeffries. This was just this morning being asked about endorsing Mamdani.
I think it's incumbent upon my Democratic colleagues to speak.
Conversation on Wednesday morning where I congratulated him on the campaign that he ran, a campaign that clearly was relentlessly focused on the high cost of living in New York City and the economy. He outworked, he out-communicated, and he out-organized the opposition, and that's clearly why he was successful.
So what's holding you back from endorsing him right now?
Well, we don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a substantive conversation with him. And so that's the next step in terms of this process, to be able to sit down, which we agreed to do in central Brooklyn, discuss his vision for moving the city forward and addressing the issues that are important to the communities that I represent, a very diverse district that I represent in Brooklyn, including many African Americans, many Jewish Americans, many Caribbean Americans who are dealing with a lot of challenges in the city and want to make sure that the next mayor of the city of New York, whoever that may be, is prepared to tackle them.
Mom, you're such a fantastic moron.
And the interviewer goes on basically, I don't know how much money Bill Ackman stuffed in his pocket to frame these questions this way. He could get a job writing for the Colbert Show, though.
You mentioned the diversity of your district, including a lot of Jewish constituents. Mamdani has made comments that some have said veer towards anti-Semitism. His initial
the old Fox News, some people have said.
Some have said.
And the old some have said trick.
Statement after October 7th, he criticized the Israeli government but didn't criticize Hamas. He defended the use of the word globalize, or the phrase globalize intifada. And he even said that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu should be arrested, or he would if he were mayor.
Oh,
he
my.
would arrest Netanyahu if he visited New York City. Do these things concern you?
I just dropped my monocle in my champagne.
Globalizing the Intifada, by way of example, is not an acceptable phrase, and he's going to have to clarify his position on that as he moves forward. With respect to the Jewish communities that I represent, I think our nominee is...
First of all, notice he didn't say it. They aren't even saying he said that. He's defending the students' rights to say that. Yeah.
Right.
Going to have to convince folks that he is prepared to aggressively address the rise in anti-Semitism in the city of New York, which has been an unacceptable development. And any mayor, whether you're a Democratic mayor, a Republican mayor, an independent mayor, has got to commit to the safety and well-being of all of the people of the city of New York. And when there are moments of crisis and a rise in anti-Jewish hate, that's a threshold, of course, needs to be crossed.
Yeah. Unless you are defining a rise in anti-Jewish hate by definition as a rise in awareness of the nature of the Israeli state and opposition to that state as a Jewish state, unless you're defining that as anti-Semitism, which of course they do. No, I am Jewish. I live here. I don't feel threatened. It is the most Jewish city outside of Israel. The idea that Jews are in danger. Now, I can show you, and I'm sure many of our viewers have seen these videos. I can show you a lot of videos of pro-Palestine people being surrounded and harassed by Zionists.
Well, it just came out today. I mean, we knew this. I didn't know. I mean, apparently this was news. Drop Site just did a thing on Betar, organizing the counter-protesting. Now, I didn't know that was news. I mean, it's obvious they organize these counter-protests. So I don't fault them for doing the piece, but it didn't strike me as news. Of course, Betar, they go around with pagers, stuffing them in pockets of protesters. That's not harassment. That's not designed to make people feel unsafe, but they'll never call that out. No.
No. I mean, I just shared a video, and this was in New York, of a bunch of Zionist, a lot of Hasidic surrounding a woman chanting in Hebrew or Yiddish, I'm not sure which, death to Arabs.
Right, exactly. So that's not that's not a problem.
How should why don't you talk about how Muslims are being made to feel unsafe by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene posting pictures of the Statue of Liberty in a burqa because a Muslim won a primary.
Right, exactly.
So this person posted, Mamdani won his district with 68% of the vote. Hakeem Jeffries is declaring war on his own constituents. Well, they always do, don't they? Dan Goldman, he basically gave a non-endorsement. We don't need to read through all that from the poor little rich boy there. So Michael Tracy here says, smart to have made the NYC primary election a referendum on Israel. And this gets into what I was saying before. You want to talk about vulnerabilities. Queer liberation means defund the police. So now you would think that people running against him in a Democratic primary would have brought that up.
Right.
Why didn't they? Because they're after voters who would like that, especially in New York. So the things that really are his vulnerabilities, they can't touch it.
Yeah.
They can't touch it.
In this case, sorry, go ahead.
To be clear, he's saying, he's saying he doesn't want to defund the police. He wants to hire mental health workers, which is a policy I agree with. But, I mean, he put that out there. Did you see one bring it up in either one of the debates? I watched both the debates. They didn't. They made it all. They thought Israel was such a slam dunk in New York City. They said, why lose some of the voters who are passionate about those issues, who are going to like that statement? Why focus on that? Israel gets you right over the finish line. Didn't work out that way.
No, exactly. Yeah, what I was going to say, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, is he said, in this case, because you're in such a liberal town that really embraces all of the woke stuff, the woke stuff is going to play to his advantage because he's going to force the opposition to criticize him on issues that he's strong on. Like, he's going to force them to criticize him about Israel, about cheap groceries, about cheap rent. Like, he's funneling all of the criticism into his strengths, basically.
Right. And to that point, so this is something that you could erode. I think a lot of these establishment Democrats don't even understand this. They don't understand the conversation around civil liberties being had on the left. Like, they're just not even in on that conversation. Socialist Democrat Zohran Mamdani pledges to root out bigotry across NYC with an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Now, this is probably on the left the most common thing I see them attacking him for. I think establishment Democrats don't even realize there's a fault line there to be exploited, honestly. I don't think they're avoiding it. I don't even think they're aware of it. Nick, increasing funding for hate crimes is a giant red flag and often the liberal way to sell funding a giant police state. He's right.
Of course,
and when he talks about this, he's giving into the framing that we have a crisis of anti-Semitism. Right. Now, when you combine this with, as we will see, some of his very extreme, what I would consider extreme views on LGBTQ rights and funding, what do you think he's going to do with an 800% increase in hate crime funding? Michael Tracy. When pressed on the anti-Semitism issue, Mamdani has been touting his proposal for an 800% increase in, quote, funding for hate crime prevention programs. So basically, he wants more pointless bureaucracy to nitpick over the definition of a hate crime and make busy work for themselves. Yes, kind of making an elite overproduction argument. I think that's exactly right. So I got to jump ahead a little bit in this video. I forgot to do that. Sorry, give me a second. You want to take a super chat real quick? We'll just cut this.
Let's see. Virtuoso. Lindsey Graham wishes it was called Midnight Cruise. Oh, I got that one already. Sorry. Where did we go here? Kuznetsky-Bassane. How do we end up with such stupefying, obsequious members of Congress by design? Thank you, Kuznetsky-Bassane. Steve Bertram. That's a new low for you, Russ. I'm a bot that's been watching and donating for a year. That'll be the last super chat I ever buy from you. We didn't call you a bot. We said there were bots on the show.
No. I wasn't referring to anyone.
No, we weren't referring to you. We weren't
no,
referring to you.
I was just talking in general.
Yeah.
About,
the bots on because we had a short
because I was looking at it while he was doing the super chats, and it's like it's been for 2 days.
Oh yeah,
we've been getting the same exact comments on this clip because it went viral enough for the Mossad to notice it.
Yeah, we had a clip on YouTube Shorts that got over 1 million views. That's what he was talking about. He wasn't calling you a bot.
No, it wasn't a reference to you. All right, I got it, more or less. All right. So here's what he said about Bill Ackman.
I will meet with them and I'll explain why I believe in the necessity of raising the top corporate tax rate. And I'd also tell Bill Ackman that I firmly disagree with his attempt to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion across the country, because it's not only against the morals of so many, it's also against the actual bottom line for so many businesses. And as a businessman, he should understand that.
All right. Well, Assemblyman, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Okay, so particularly if you want to stir up, because this is clearly going to be a generational kind of an election, as it often is in Democrat on Democrat violence. Yeah, man. To be fair, I saw another interview he did today with Meet the Press where he said billionaires shouldn't exist. But she asked him about Bill Ackman. He didn't focus on that. He focused on DEI, which, needless to say, is very divisive. Now, you do have, it splits. The polling is kind of all over the place with this. But it seems like it kind of splits 50-50. And opinions on DEI programs. Certainly in terms of his base, it's probably, 90-10 or something, favor it. But if you really want to stir up the older people to vote, you might want to talk about this, but they can't. They can't. Not as Democrats. They cannot go after DEI as Democrats. He is proposing $65 million for gender-affirming care, including for youth. Now, again, that is something, certainly if he were running in another city, another state, certainly if he were running nationally, that is something that, especially now, to continue to have that position, even as the overwhelming evidence that there is no science to support the proposition that these treatments are worth the risks, have become so clear that even The Atlantic caught onto it and just dropped an article talking about how, yes, like this is a misinformation bubble. We've covered this. One country after another, not coincidentally, I think, with a not-for-profit healthcare system, has done a meta-analysis of the data for this and found it completely lacking. There is no evidence to support, certainly given the consequences of getting it wrong, that this is a course of treatment that should be prescribed for children who certainly cannot consent to it. But he has this policy. Now, I suspect this is what I have found with most people who believe this. They just knee-jerk kind of walk right into it as the default left position without really knowing anything about the subject at all. Also, there's a sizable number of people who would be inclined to vote for Mamdani who like policies like this and who specifically would probably get angry if he did not have these policies. Point being, you want to go after Mamdani, the cheap grocery stores are probably not the line of attack to go with. Or this, hey, 2017, NYC ordered a review of public works constituting symbols of hate for potential removal. But a statue of Columbus remains in Astoria in defiance of the values of humanity, empathy, and justice that we stand for.
Andrew Cuomo is not going to like that one.
He's not going to like that one. It has to go sign the petition. Now, I'm not necessarily against that. One thing I will point out that really shows you how psyoped we are, because I consider a lot of the identity politics an intentional distraction from class and economics. Okay, man, we want to start like dismantling systems of oppression and you're a socialist. Why don't you lobby to take Carnegie, who literally sent troops to murder union strikers? Why don't you lobby to take Carnegie's name off things? Why isn't that considered a criminal, a historic criminal whose name shouldn't be on anything? Henry Ford, the Nazi. Why aren't people lobbying to get Ford to change their name, right? Traitors to workers who happen to be successful, uber successful capitalists, these are not to be questioned. They cannot have you questioning why Carnegie's name is on things given that he murdered workers. That is why they direct you to Columbus. That is why they direct you to wanting to remove statues of Ulysses S. Grant, because they don't want you talking about, well, why do we honor Carnegie, a guy who literally sent troops in to murder workers who were striking for better wages? Why is Frick's name on the Frick Museum? That was who Carnegie sent to go kill them, and he did. So why don't we demand that they change the name of the Frick Museum? It's a good example of how you have been psyoped into not thinking in those terms, into thinking only about this. So look, Mamdani, I appreciate that he talks about economics and class. He's savvy and sophisticated enough to know that he should lead with that and not these things. You wouldn't know about these things unless you looked into them, because you watch him in interviews, he never brings it up. But what's interesting is nobody else brings it up because he's running as a Democrat.
Right.
A Republican would bring it up. Maybe Sliwa will wind up bringing things like this up. That's
a non-starter
possible.
In New York.
But the Democrat on Democrat, I'll be very surprised if this comes up.
Yeah, and it's a non-starter in New York City. And if Cuomo runs, that splits the centrist Democrat vote. It's interesting because a lot of Republicans were calling for Sliwa to drop out to make this a head-to-head between Adams and Mamdani, assuming Cuomo didn't run. The problem with that is at that point, Adams would be forced to brand himself MAGA because he is literally being coerced by Donald Trump to assist in ICE deportations. So the fact that you have Hakeem Jeffries withholding his endorsement, Dan Goldman withholding his endorsement, Gillibrand, Schumer, none of them have endorsed. They are essentially going to try and rat fuck this race to throw it to the criminal incumbent mayor who's being coerced by the president to assist in ICE raids and mass deportations. That's how much they care about their voters. That's how much they care about the voters. And as for the other stuff, it's not going to stick in New York, which is why the fact that Cuomo may stay in is potentially a big boon for him.
Even Cuomo didn't bring that shit up.
Yeah, exactly.
Please clap.